Hi, this is Khalil Goliwala. Welcome to another episode of the BIPOC Manager podcast. And today's episode, I'm really excited to have Meltem Kilicaslan Greisman with us. Meltem is a seasoned growth and leadership coach, mediator, dynamic speaker, and skill dialogue facilitator. She's dedicated to helping people achieve their dreams through intentional growth. She believes that the journey to a higher level of success begins with evolving internally and finding peace. She provides coaching, training programs to teams and organizations to foster better relationships and ultimately humanize the way we work by transforming conflict into a catalyst for growth. Meltem, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited speaking with you.
Amazing, Meltem. This is one of the things why I kind of got you as a guest over here is because, conflict's such a huge part of our lives, not just conflict, but more importantly, maybe resolving that conflict. And so, Meltem, really a broad question, like, can you walk us through what conflict resolution is and your strategies to dealing with it?
Well, that's a big question. I think we can talk about this hours and hours, but I'll try to summarize it the best I can. Conflict resolution is, for me, being human in a relationship with someone else. Conflict happens because people hold different perspectives, different ideas, different way of wanting to resolve things. They hold their different truths, and on top of it, we have emotional attachments to those topics. So it's not that we hold different perspectives, but because we are coming to the conversation with some emotions, usually negative emotions. So when that combination happens, a conflict arises. And what I am working on is normalizing conflict, because we tend to, as humanity, we think that, oh my gosh, again, another conflict. We don't want conflict. In our personal relationships, in our workplaces, we are not mostly, I don't want to, generalize it, but mostly we are not comfortable with conflict. So what I come across in my personal life too, to have that peace internally, I need to normalize conflict, because just like breathing air, eating, the conflict happens all the time. And how do I normalize it? By gaining skill sets so I can handle conflict in a much more productive way, in a responsive way instead of reactive way. And with that, the outcomes can be so much more better, and actually relationships can improve, and we can have better relationships. So just in a nutshell, conflict is not that we have conflicts. As a general, we don't know how to deal with conflicts. That's the problem.
Amazing. And I think that's right, because I think of, ever since you're kids, always about, avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding those hard topics. But it seems like being an adult and being human being involves kind of, leaning into this conflicts. Do you find that, do you think the vocabulary makes a difference? Like I feel like when people talk about arguments, misunderstandings, miscommunications, conflict, do you think the vocabulary could be making a difference? Like, is there something structurally different between a conflict versus a misunderstanding versus miscommunication? Or are they all just different ways of talking about the same thing?
You are, I'm with you. I think words do matter, especially. Perhaps I'm also looking at the words. I'm testing on my clients as well. When I say I'm a conflict resolution coach, people a little bit distance themselves. Oh, we don't have conflicts, in workspace. When I say I am a peace expert, organizational peace expert, it's perceived a little bit more warmly. So yes, how we define, how we angle, the vocabulary, it's very important, because conflict is like. Or misunderstandings and everything, we can soften the conversation so people are not thinking that, oh my gosh, this is a conflict now. It's just a misunderstanding. Let's work on it.
Okay.
Maybe they tend to feel a little bit warmer. So yes, the word, I mean, technically it is a conflict, but the words that we use soften sometimes, and can become much more welcoming, inviting people into the dialogue.
Interesting. Thank you for calling out, Melton. And so maybe could you walk us through your process? So, for example, I think you mentioned kind of working with clients, working at spaces. Can you give an example of kind of like what your process is when you kind of, like what kind of situation would you be kind of called into for conflict, misunderstandings, and how do you bring peace in those situations?
Yes. So normally, most organizations, they bring a mediator in when there is a big unresolved conflict, a dispute that actually fired up. It's really they cannot manage internally and they bring a mediator. However, my process is I would like to go into companies, and that's what I do, to give preventative training. I give skills to people, to organizations, to teams, so that escalated conflicts won't happen because now they're equipped with some skills and they normalized the conflict. So whenever there is a misunderstanding, miscommunication, anything might be happening, they have the skills to handle it by themselves. And that's very empowering for any organization, for any team, instead of shoveling the conflicts under the carpet and not, accepting conflict and shaming the conflict. And then it just becomes a wild fire, forest fire, and then they can't handle it. So my process is I like to go with the individuals, with the teams, practice role plays, give them scenarios, make it normalized. Because when I give them a also tip, skill, and then the role play, what happens is they are not emotionally charged. So they can actually practice with the learned skill so much easier than, it's happening and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. This is where like I imagine that there's sort of this double narrative. On one hand, as a company, you may not want to say the word, oh, we have conflicts we need to deal with. But your approach to kind of say is actually let's give people the tools that if it were to come up, right, they're able to preemptively kind of solve it as much as possible. One thing I want to point out there is you mentioned about emotions.
Mm.
So what is that process like when you're working with the emotional lives of different people?
Well, I like right now we sit in front of each other as two human beings. I think we keep forgetting in our society we are very individualistic, right? We individually want to improve ourselves and want to be better and want to achieve our goals. Um, but I would like to remind us that we are all in relation. We are relational beings. So whenever I'm in front of a friend or a client or in business environment, I create that relationship first, human relationship. And in a human relationship, the minute that we start seeing each other or just solve the problem, no, us together by understanding each other, let's solve the problem. It really humanizes the way that we collaborate together.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, I'm not only focusing on the problem, I'm also focusing what your gifts are, what you can contribute, what your perspectives are. And that requires lots of asking questions and not assuming.
Mhm.
And that involves inviting you to solve the problem, brainstorm, and come up with alternative ways of solving the problem. That involves me seeing you as a human being. And if you resist, for example, some areas, asking further questions to understand why you might be thinking in that certain way, what life experiences or previous experiences leads you to think in a certain way. So it brings curiosity, it brings compassion. So, and I think that makes it more joyful and fun to work with someone.
Yeah. No, I see there's so much there, Malcolm, because I've been in situations where there was some kind of again all the way from conflict, all the misunderstanding at work. Sometimes certain work environments, just raising a hand and saying there's something to be solved or problem is treated as a problem within itself. But
Yes,
and it seems like what you're doing is you're actually getting people to actually don't run away from the word conflict, misunderstanding, but actually see it as part of the process. And be almost like an expression I heard is be hard on the problem, but be easy on the people. See them as solution, the people you want to bring in, you understand, and curiosity in there.
yes. And setting an intention is very important. What I do, what I personally practice, every occasion that I walk in, I set an intention for myself. In any conflict situation, any misunderstanding or whatever, if I personally set an intention, my intention is to have a good relationship with this person and ideally work together to resolve the problem. Then my conversation totally changed because I set an intention. So, what I do in those circumstances, I'm not focusing on who said right, who said wrong, who did right, who did wrong. Like, no blames, nothing. My focus is We are a team together, and I would like to work together to find a solution to the problem. So with that intention, even my interaction with you change.
Yeah. Yeah, Melvin, before as you come to the end of the episode, I want to ask you, is there anything that you wanna mention, or anything that you want to maybe highlight a little bit more?
Um, Let me think. I think there is an importance that I would like to mention, the setting boundaries in workplace and to have less conflicts or misunderstandings and so on. And the reason that I'm bringing it up, I'm fascinated with this topic. I have been taking more courses on the topic and combining that with conflict resolution. So um, we tend to think that setting boundaries is between two people,
Yeah.
that in common language. But the more I do studies on it, that's setting a limit between two people. So we set limits. However, boundaries is having like your second skin. Whatever people are saying, their judgments, their emotions, their opinions about you, if we have a very porous skin, second skin, we let all of it in and it affects us.
Mm.
Whereas if we have a very healthy boundary about ourselves, if you make a comment about me, for example, I can say, do I agree with this? Is partially could it be right? Which parts can I take in to improve something about myself? And which parts is just his opinion and it's his judgment and it has nothing to do with me? And that's the healthy boundary. And sometimes people are walled off. If it is like the other spectrum, it's walled off. You don't accept anything, any comments, any judgment, or you let all in, and it's very unhealthy as well. So to have less conflicts in our relationships, I find as much as having conflict strategies tips, I would like to also bring to the conversation that having healthy boundaries, internal boundaries, is extremely important as well. Because now we are entering in the conversation. Yeah, we are, for example, I'm originally from Turkey. I moved to Germany. I came to Canada. And people do have upbringing, certain opinions, certain experiences, and they might have opinions about Turkish culture or about me without really knowing me. How much do I let in? That's up to me.
Mm.
It's not them. If I let all in, it is not that they did something wrong. It's just their upbringing, learning, life experiences. But it is my responsibility. How much do I let in? So I just wanna put it out there. I think it's a very fascinating topic as well.
Interesting. I want to maybe just click on that for a second, because and because when my mind was almost thinking of a boundary is almost is the limit of the conflict you have with yourself, right? In some sense, you're kind of saying, how much do I want to put in? How much do I want? So that's an internal conflict that you're having, and this is just that a representation of it. Any thoughts to that? Any feedback on that?
It's such a great observation. I agree. It's like having a protective bubble around us when we are interacting with people. Because our conflict styles, each of us, we all have a conflict style, and that comes through upbringing, through our childhood. It's almost like our adaptive inner child adapted to certain situations, and we became maybe avoider or we became a fighter. And it's not right, good or bad. It's just what is. We develop a certain style. So when we are triggered, when there is something is triggering us, we tend to go to that natural style. If, for example, I proudly say that I'm a recovering conflict avoider. Why recovering? Because I have been working on it. The habitual style was avoidance, but not anymore, because now I have all the tools in my toolbox, and I have the awareness that whenever something is triggered, I can make that assessments which style is better to use in these circumstances. So I don't need to always go to the default mode, right? So that's one thing that I do with my clients. I actually give them the tool. First, they understand self-awareness. Yeah, my style is avoidance. Not all the time, like it can go different, but I'm talking about what is the most of the time that your natural style that you feel like going into.
Yeah.
And then I give them the tools. So when it comes to that, putting a protective zone on above ourselves is exactly, you are right, it's the internal conflict. Because yes, in relation there is a conflict arising or miscommunication is happening, but how much of that protective zone exists, self-esteem exists, that we let it in
Yeah.
or we don't? Because if we let all in, oh my gosh, life is really like relationships becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. Amazing, Meltem. And so in terms of if anyone wants to kind of get in touch with you, find out more about you, what's the best way they could do that?
um, by email, my by phone, or I have a website, LinkedIn,
Okay,
by any means.
amazing. And then if in Meltem, are you able to mention what your website is, maybe your LinkedIn and maybe your email in case people want to know? And I'll include that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's very easy. All of them is Meltem, Meltem. My name is Meltem, but the website is meltemk.com, and my email is meltem@meltemk.com.
Amazing, Meltem. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I think, I hope these conversations are helping people to have better relationships and easier time with conflicts.
Yes, I hope so, Meltem. Thank you.
Thank you.